Okay, so you know that phrase, we were better off when we were worse off. It's kind of like one of those things you hear and you're not sure if it's profound or just some kind of weird nostalgia.
Yeah, it's like a common thread through history, right? Almost every generation seems to have a bit of that.
Right, like we can see all the ways things are better now, healthcare technology, even just basic rights. But then there's this voice that's like, yeah, but things were simpler then.
Exactly. And that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. You've given us a ton of sources on this, from biology and psychology journals to like straight up philosophy. We're going to break down why this idea feels right to so many people, even when, on paper, it might not make sense.
So are we all kidding ourselves? Like, is this just rose-colored glasses and our brains being weird?
Let's start with some basic brain stuff. Our brains are kind of hardwired to get used to things, good or bad. Like, you win the lottery, it's amazing, but eventually it's just your life, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But then wouldn't that mean we just kind of get used to bad stuff too? So why do we look back on harder times and be like, oh, those were the days?
Think about what happens when things are tough. Your brain wants to help you get through it, right? So it actually pumps out dopamine and endorphins, the feel-good chemicals. It's a survival thing.
Hold on. So even when things are rough, my brain is trying to find the upside.
Exactly. It's not rewriting history. It's more like it's making some chapters brighter and others dimmer. So later on, you remember those bright spots, the times you were tough, more than the day-to-day grind.
That's kind of wild. It's like we're programmed for nostalgia, even if things weren't that great.
And speaking of nostalgia, we can't forget how strong it is. It colors how we see the past big time.
It's true, though. Nostalgia isn't just remembering good times. It's like this whole emotional thing. We end up longing for stuff that maybe wasn't even that good to begin with.
It's totally true. Nostalgia gives us this comfort, a feeling of belonging, like a connection to when things seemed, I don't know, maybe just more familiar. And it's really powerful when everything feels uncertain or like it's changing too fast. The present is shaky. Boom, the past seems safe, even if it wasn't perfect.
And that's where this gets really interesting, right? It's not just us. It's like a whole society thing.
Right. Sociologists actually call it collective nostalgia. And you see it a lot during big upheavals, economic crashes, political stuff, even pandemics. Those create what they call anomie, this feeling that nothing's connecting and nobody knows what the rules are anymore. And suddenly, the past looks really good, even if it was objectively tougher.
Like we crave order, even if it came with a price. It reminds me of something in one of these articles about the philosophy of it all. It said that struggling, like really struggling to survive, that gives you a sense of purpose, a meaning you don't get when your needs are just met.
You're talking about existentialism. It's a whole branch of philosophy dealing with finding meaning in a world that might not have any inherent meaning, you know? Philosophers like Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre, they said, true freedom is realizing life's kind of absurd and then deciding what matters to you. So in that way, the struggles of the past, they're how we made meaning. We survived, and that means something. And sometimes that story, that we're survivors, it's more powerful than the present, even if the present is comfy, but we don't know what it means.
Okay, so we've got our brains messing with memories, collective nostalgia tugging at us, and then existentialism saying maybe meaning isn't about having it easy. What a combo.
And we're just getting started. There's this whole other layer to the better off puzzle, how we see progress itself. Is it always moving forward? Like a straight line getting better? Not really. I mean, history's messy, right? It's not always moving up. But we tend to think newer automatically means better, and that's not always how it works.
Yeah, it's like the old days had problems, and today isn't perfect, but we get so caught up comparing that we miss the point. Every time period has its own thing going on.
Exactly. Think about community, for example. A lot of older societies being really close, that was how you survived. It meant support, belonging, all that. But now we might have more freedom as individuals, more choices, but we lose some of that closeness.
So it's like a trade-off. We get some stuff, maybe tech stuff, but something else gets lost.
Exactly. And that sense of loss, it feeds into this disenchantment thing Max Weber talked about. You know, the more modern we get, the more we focus on being efficient, rational. We lose those old traditions, the rituals, even just the beliefs that gave people a sense of purpose.
Trading one to four, like predictability. I could see that.
And that emptiness, nostalgia tries to fill it. But it's not about saying the past was perfect or ignoring the progress we've made. It's about getting that better is complicated. It's not just one thing.
So how do we make sense of all this? Because, yeah, medicine's better, tech's better, rights are better. But then there's this feeling that we lost something on the way.
Maybe we need to change how we define better, both personally and as a society. It's not just stuff or technology. It's connection, purpose. Are people actually doing okay? Is the planet doing okay? All of that.
It's not like picking the past
Yeah.
or the present, right? More like seeing the good and bad of both to make better choices now.
Yeah. Learn from the past. Don't just get stuck there. Like, how do we use tech to connect people instead of isolating them? How do we build a world that's good for everyone, not just some?
Big questions.
Hmm.
And makes you wonder how much of this better off thing is just in our heads versus how things actually were.
Oh, that's huge. Our own experiences, the stories we tell about the past, they matter so much. And those get shaped by how we grew up, who were around, even the stuff we watch and read.
So it's not enough to just like look at the history books, right?
Yeah.
I've got to think about the human side of it, how we remember things, the stories we tell that changes how we see better.
Yeah, it's true. And this is where it gets really interesting because maybe the were we better off question, it's not even about comparing different times, but about just being human, you know?
Right.
We change, we adapt, we're always looking for meaning, for connection. And a lot of times that makes us romanticize the past, see it as having things it might not have actually had.
Like we're wired for nostalgia, even if it means we kind of gloss over the bad stuff.
Yeah, and nostalgia's powerful. We can't forget that. But we got to be aware of it too. It's good to learn from the past, even find inspiration there, but we can't let it control us now, you know?
So how do we do that? Appreciate the past, but not get stuck in it.
I think it starts with thinking critically, like really questioning what we believe about progress, those back in my day stories, being open to the idea that the future might have its own way of being better, something we haven't even thought of yet.
And maybe it's okay if better isn't perfect, right? Every era has its ups and downs. That's just how it is.
Exactly. It's about embracing the messiness, right? There's no one answer to the better off question. What matters is that we're creating a present and a future that we actually want, that reflects what we care about.
And maybe if we can do that, if we can see the good and the bad in both the past and now, maybe the future we make will be something people look back on fondly, not because it was perfect, but because we were trying.
Wouldn't that be something? To leave behind a world that future generations actually miss? Not because it was easy, but because it was a time of growth, of new ideas, of really wanting to make things better.
That's a great point to wrap up on. We've covered a lot in this deep dive, from the science of our brains to like the whole philosophy of meaning, all because of this idea of better.
We've gone from what's going on inside our heads to how societies change, how what we remember shapes how we see the world now and what it could be.
Thanks to everyone listening for coming along on this journey with us. Remember, the past can teach us, but we're the ones building the future.
And who knows, maybe someday someone will look back at us and be like, they were really onto something. Until next time, keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep diving deep.